Hey, welcome back. I hope you're having a great weekend. I'm recording outside for this video because I'm about to head out on a road trip to the Yosemite National Park area, and so I thought I'd do a quick test of the microphone and webcam just in a very minimal setup because when I'm on the road, maybe from the cabin at some point, I might record a video or two just to keep this series going. And also, since I'm off work, I will be able to record some videos while the market is open. So maybe I'll wake up early a couple of days and record while the market's open and have this system execute some trades. So I want to make sure that this stuff is ready to go since I'm about to pack my laptop up and leave. So let's go ahead and get started. So in the last video, we snapshotted some historical price data, and we gave a preview of the web UI that we're about to build. So we have our database already populated with stock symbols and price data. We have our config.py that has our API key and the database file that we're going to use. We can create and drop our database on command, and we can populate our stocks and populate our prices whenever we want. So that stuff should all be populated already. So now that that is populated, what are we going to do? We're going to build a little web front end to browse this data because, it gets old after a while just browsing from the command line or running SQL queries. It's great to learn that, but it's very motivating to see your database or your application on a web app or a mobile app. And so we want to make something pretty here. So let's go ahead and get started doing that. And due to demand, I want to revisit the FastAPI framework. A couple of people have mentioned they want me to use FastAPI for this, and I think it's a good fit. And if you're unfamiliar, and I'm going through this from scratch, so you don't need to watch this, but I actually do have a series on this FastAPI. So if you want to watch a full five video tutorial on FastAPI, feel free to browse through this. In this tutorial, I talk about some of the more advanced features that we might not get into here. So I'll talk about like dependency injection and background tasks and things like that. And I also talk about object relational mappers. So I talk about SQL Alchemy for accessing your database. So this is a good tutorial, but in this video, we're going to start from scratch again. And so I just thought I would mention that we already have some material on FastAPI. So I used Flask in the last few videos. FastAPI is not that different for what we're going to do. It has a lot more features, but we're not going to use all of them for this particular series, at least not yet. So we'll see where this ends up. This is a work in progress. So the first thing we need to do to get set up, so we already have our code editor, and we just need to install FastAPI, the library, and the Uvicorn package here. And when we install those, we'll be good to go with all our dependencies. So I'll do that. I'll install FastAPI and Uvicorn here, and those are installed now, right? And so FastAPI is the framework we're going to use, and Uvicorn is this web server that we're going to use to serve up our web application instead of something like Apache or Nginx or Light HTTP, Lighty, or however you pronounce it. So there's a variety of web servers we can use. This Uvicorn lets us, it has a little built-in local web server as well, so we can serve up this application on our desktop before we deploy it to a server. All right, so we have that installed now, and so we're going to go ahead and create a new file, and we're calling it main.py, and this is our main web application. And then the first thing we need to do is import FastAPI. And so, as always, for this series at least, I have this all written in order if you want to follow along. And so we import FastAPI, and let's talk about what this does. So we're importing FastAPI, so this is a class, and we're creating an instance of a FastAPI application, and so that's app. And so what we need for our application to get started, when you're building a web application and someone's visiting your web application, they access it in the browser and they type in a URL route, right? And so the way FastAPI and Flask work is that you define your route here as a decorator on top of a function here, right? And so this app.get and this slash means all GET requests to this base slash route, those will get routed to this function, and whatever response this function returns will be what's returned to the browser. For example, right? Actually, let's run this application real quick, right? So let's run this Uvicorn server and try to serve up this app and see what it does. Okay, so we have this little command, Uvicorn main is the name of our file, and that's our application. And this little command says reload, and that means whenever we make any source code changes here and save it, it'll automatically reload the application, so we don't have to like rebuild anything or restart the server. So we're going to run our application. We're going to paste this command in, hit enter, and you see it starts the application. It says Uvicorn is running on localhost 8000. 127.0.0.1 is localhost, so we can either type localhost or this local IP address. So if I put that in the browser, you'll see we get hello world. Or if I put localhost colon 8000. So this isn't on a server yet. It's getting served up from our local machine, and it returns a JSON response, hello world. So if I return a data structure like a dictionary here from this function, then that will get converted to JSON. So by default, this returns JSON data. So this is a Python dictionary, but when it comes to the web, it's actually JSON format. And this is because FastAPI is built for API backends by default. And so you could have multiple different types of front ends that call this backend and make a request to get some data. And you want it in a structured format like JSON. And then if you had an Android or iOS app or a web application that's written with a UI framework or library like React Native or like React or AngularJS or Vue.js or whatever framework you're interested in for a UI, you can just use FastAPI to provide the data layer. So it talks to your database. It creates a route mapped to a function and returns whatever data you need, and then your UI layer can just format this data however you want. So JSON is a good structured format to return your data in. And so the way this decorator works, right, the slash route is the base route, right? And that's why this function here, or this decorator slash, calls this function. Now, if I had the route as hello right there, right, then I would go to slash hello, and that's what would execute the route. And if I went back to slash, it'll say not found, right? Because we don't have a base route defined. So this structure determines our route. So if I wanted the route to be dashboard by default, I put dashboard there, and then I can return something different. So I can say like title dashboard. Okay. And you see how we can modify our response. So that would be the dashboard. So I'm going to just have the slash route be the main dashboard. And then what do we actually want to return on our dashboard? So we don't have a dashboard route anymore. It's just slash. All right, so that's a pretty boring dashboard as just plain JSON data right now that just says title dashboard. So let's go ahead and think about what we want to put on our homepage. And what we want to do, we could put a cool logo and splash screen. We'll get to that eventually. But the first thing we can do, since we have all this data, so the stock symbols and the stock prices, let's go ahead and just create a listing of our stock symbols and the company names. That way we can browse through all of these symbols in our database. So to do that, we already have the code, right? We have our populate stocks code here that does select from the stock table. So we can get some of this code already, right? So all this code for connecting. So we just need to import SQLite and config. So let's copy this to our main.py at the top. We can import those and they'll be accessible in our web application. So it's nice. We're reusing the config file from those command line scripts, and we're using that config file in our web application as well. And we already have our API key and our database file defined here. And so that's very useful. So we have back in our populate stocks, we know how to connect to our SQLite database and fetch some rows. So we can just take that code, and we'll probably break this down and make some other reusable functions. But for now, I'm going to put this directly in my route. So I'll indent that out. And so when my route slash is hit, we'll connect to SQLite, connect to our database file, set up our row factory. So we'll return a SQLite row objects, get our cursor, we select from our stocks, and I'll go ahead and select the ID as well. And then we fetch the rows, fetch all the rows from that query, and return it in rows. And so in addition to title and dashboard, so we return a dictionary. Let's return another dictionary that's just called with a key of stocks. And then let's just pass our rows in as the value. And if we go and refresh this page, boom, look at that. So we have our title in here, and then we have a key called stocks, and then that key has a list of every single stock in our database. So now this functions kind of like an API. If we're building our own API with FastAPI, and we wanted to offer that as a service, say, I have an API for you, and if you hit this route, I'll give you a list of all the symbols, and I'll just maintain the database, and anyone else can use this. So if you wanted to create your own API for other people to use and serve up this stock database as JSON, that's an easy way to do it. And you could, since we have stock price data, we can even serve up stock price data as a service. And if you have enough interesting data, you could even make money, right? You could charge for access to this cool data set that you have, for instance, and make an API for it. So there's whole companies, you know, someone like Alpaca is actually an API company, right? Their whole service is giving you an API for trading. So, you know, there's a lot of API first companies. Twilio provides an API for text messaging services, and so forth. There's a lot of companies starting like this right now. But we're not going to use this as an API primarily. We're going to use this as a web framework. So we're going to format this data in a nice user interface. So instead of returning JSON, we're going to return templates from this route. And so let's go ahead and talk about how to do that. And I think, let's see if I'm not done with this article yet, but we're going to do it as we go. So that's the old post. Let me see if I have, did I set that up? No, I didn't. So let's go ahead and learn how to set up Jinja 2 templates, and then I'll finish the article after this. So I'm kind of going freestyle right now. So we have Jinja 2 templates and FastAPI. And also it's worth going to the FastAPI website as well, since I didn't really look at that yet. So this is the homepage for FastAPI, talks about some of the features, and gives you the kind of hello world example that I just showed, installing FastAPI, Uvicorn, and doing this little hello world route. And so what we're going to do now is talk about how to return a response, not as JSON, but as just an HTML template. Okay, so if you go to the advanced user guide here and search for templates, there's this templates link right here, and I'm going to use Jinja 2 templates, and I covered this in the Flask tutorials in some of the other web apps we build on this channel, and they're just HTML templates with some little programmatic syntax sprinkled in, and let's show how that works. And so we're going to borrow a couple lines from here just to get this set up. Number one, we're going to take this FastAPI templating, import Jinja 2 templates, and I'll include this on the blog article later. So I'm going to take this and then put this at the top. And so this is our Jinja 2 templates library, and we're going to import that. And then we also need this templates equals Jinja 2 templates. And so we're configuring a templates directory. And so that's going to be where we put all of our view logic, so our display logic. So I'm going to create a folder called templates. And inside of that folder, I'm going to create a file called index.html, and this will be my first template, right? And actually, let's not just write my first template. Let's create an actual HTML file. So I'm not sure how much familiarity, I don't know, does everyone know HTML? I don't know. I'm just going to write HTML here and not make it very complicated, and you can follow along. So we have HTML tags, a head tag, and a title tag, and we're going to call this stocks, and then that's the title of our page, and then we need a body section, and it's going to say this is our content, right? And that's just a basic HTML template, just like that. And then what we want to do, this shows us how to return a template response, and it looks like you have to include this parameter called request, and include this in the arguments to the function. And so take that request and put it there. And this is a reference to the request object. So when the user makes a request to your web page, the request object has a lot of information, such as the HTTP headers, probably some information about their IP address, like who the person is requesting it, what browser they're using. There's a lot of stuff that can be sniffed out of the HTTP request. It has some information about the route they're browsing and so forth. Actually, we can print it out. Let's print it out just to show you what's in there. So let's see if we can go ahead and print some information about the request object. Let's type dir, and that's like that'll tell us some information about the object. So I'll print that, And if I refresh my page here, this should tell us a little bit of information. So you'll see this has a variety of, it has like information about the headers, the request body, authorization stuff. So there's a lot of information packed into this request object. But the point is to use these templates, you're supposed to pass a reference to the request to the template. And so back on FastAPI, Jinja 2 templates, and we only need to talk about how this works one time. We need to return a template response. So we're going to copy this line, and here, instead of returning a Python dictionary, we're going to return a template response. So instead of JSON getting returned, this will return an HTML template, and we called our template index.html, and we said our templates live in this directory called templates. So we created a directory called templates, we created index.html, and so we just put index.html here. We give it our reference to our request. So this accepts a dictionary. So it's the name of the template and then a dictionary containing a reference to the request, which has the key request. And then we can pass it whatever data we want. So I'm going to say stocks and then rows, just like we did here, and we'll delete that. So instead of returning that Python dictionary, which returns JSON, we're going to return JSON or return a template response, which will render this HTML template. And that HTML template will have access to the stocks in our database because we just retrieved them. And so if I save that and refresh the page now, you'll see it just says, this is our content. And that's because our HTML template here has, this is our content. And then the title says stocks. Okay, so that's the title of our web application. And that's some basic content. Now, that's not very interesting yet, right? So let's replace this as our content. And then we're gonna, you can loop. The beauty of these Jinja 2 templates is you can do a loop inside of them instead of writing out all of the HTML for every stock, right? You can take a data structure, loop over it just like a Python script, and then embed that like right in your HTML. So I can do for stock and stocks and for, okay? And then we'll talk about more about that syntax, but don't worry about that too much yet. Just try it out if you are unfamiliar. And then use these curly braces here to display a variable. And so I can put stock just like that and refresh. And you see it prints a lot of SQLite row objects. But SQLite row objects, as we know, you can access the individual attributes of these objects. So let's put stock ID, stock symbol, and stock name. And there you go. Now you start seeing the names of all of these stock symbols. So that's still kind of ugly, right? So let's put this in a table. So we can put a table tag. And then for each stock, we'll print a row. So we're going to loop through inside of the table and print rows. So I'll do TR, which is a table row, like that. And then we'll just create some TDs, which are just cells, just like that. And then in each of these, we'll put a value like stock ID, stock symbol, and stock name. And then now we have that data in a table format. So we're already browsing our database, but you know, it's very, very basic, very plain. And so how do we make this a little bit prettier? So what we'll do now is add to our application. Let's add a UI framework that'll just add some default styling so we don't have to spend a lot of time on styles and colors and things like that yet, and fonts and typography. Let's use Semantic UI, which I've talked about on the previous FastAPI tutorial. So semanticui.com here, get started. And there's actually just, you can include this in a variety of ways, using like node packages and all this other stuff, but I don't want to focus too much on JavaScript tooling here. That's why I'm not using a framework like React or AngularJS and so forth, because we'll get bogged down in all the details of how to write JavaScript, and I don't want to lose people that aren't. A lot of people's main goal on watching this channel, the audience mostly wants to learn Python, so I don't want to spend a lot of time. I know a lot of React.js and work with it all the time, but I don't want to talk about that right now. So this will save us a lot of time. So we can just include a simple CSS and JavaScript file from a CDN or content distribution network. We'll include this as a couple lines in our file, and all of a sudden we can use all of these widgets and components from Semantic UI. So where is that? For integrating Semantic UI, see our recipe section. So we want the CDN. So I'm going to go to recipes, and then if you scroll down, they'll provide, see these two lines here called CDN releases. This is just prepackaged version, a minified version of the Semantic minimal CSS, so some styles, and we can put that right in the heading, in the head here, and we'll get access to the Semantic UI styles. And then there's some JavaScript to include as well, so we include this script tag. And then if we include both of those things in our template and then refresh our page, you should notice the font changed a little bit. That's because that lets us know that those fonts and styles are getting applied here. And so if we want this to be a nice looking Semantic UI table and not worry too much about our table styling, we can go to the side here, and they provide the benefit of using a UI framework like a Semantic UI is that there's these cool widgets, right? You want your buttons to look nice without having to style them too much. There's all these buttons. You can include different icons, and this really gets you a head start on your application. And there's a lot of these frameworks like Bootstrap that you may have heard of as well, or Google's Material UI if you want it to look more like Google's Android or Gmail style of application that you'll see all the time. So there's icon sets. There's all these cool things we can use. So if we want a table, there's a table widget here, and so we can decide which one of these we want our table to look like. And so it provides some easy copy paste examples, right? And so if I scroll down, I kind of liked this black one, but you can use whatever style. So if you copy like this, you can click this to see the source code of this, and then they provide all these examples. So if I want to, inside of the body, paste that in and see what it looks like in my page, you'll see we already have access to this table style, which is great. And so now all I have to do is, instead of John, Jamie, and Jill, let's go ahead and replace this and loop through our stocks instead. So I'm going to take this table, right? And for our headings, let's put symbol and name, and I'm going to call one detail or view. And so we're going to have another link where we drill down into an individual stock. So we're going to have our big stock listing, and I'm going to click view, and that's going to go to a page just for Apple stock and show an Apple chart, for instance. Okay, so we have our headings, and then instead of looping through these names, we're going to loop through our stocks. So we're going to delete these rows, and inside of this T body here, let's go ahead and loop through our rows. So, okay, so that's the simple table, and we already have this for stock and stocks. And let's put that inside of here. And then all of a sudden we are going to be using Semantic UI. And put that there. Okay, it looks good. It's nice and nested. And we're looping through our rows, head, body. And I'll post the source code for this as well soon. Okay, so we have our table just like that. So we basically copy the structure of the table from Semantic UI and then replace the rows with our stock loop here. And now if I refresh my page, there you go. So now we have a styled symbol, name, and we have this view, which we haven't done anything with yet, and we can browse. It's starting to look a little more like a real application, which is great. And then we can also, so this is the inverted table, but maybe we want our table to be striped, for instance. And so see this striped table? So if we want it white like this, we just put striped instead of inverted. And so this makes it very easy to change our table. So I'm going to do striped, and I don't think we need the selectable. So UI striped table. Okay. And then now if I do that, right, so we have it alternating black, gray and white colors already. So if you see a theme in here you like, feel free to use that as well. See, you can make it different colors. Maybe we want, actually that's kind of cool, the green, if you want it to look like Robin Hood or something like that. So there's a lot of different options here. So make it your own. Okay, so I'm going to use this simple white striped one here, right? And so you see this takes up the whole screen, so we might not want that, right? So let's go ahead and use a container. And so they have this layouts. And so we're going to use, so they have some layouts you can borrow if you want to see what layouts look like. So if you want to make like a login form, you can copy the code they provide here. But we're just going to use basic containers. So there's an element called container, and this will just let it give us a little bit of margin so that this doesn't take up the full width of the screen, and also allows you to make it responsive. So you can define like how your layout looks like on a large laptop screen if someone's on the desktop, but also make it shrink down gracefully when someone's looking at your web application on a smartphone, on an iOS or Android device, or if you want to define it looks like a certain way on a tablet, you can do that as well. But all you really need here is, I believe it's just UI container. I'm just going to use the most basic container for now. And I believe you just type div class equals UI container. Okay. And then you put the table inside of there. And let's see how that goes. So I'm going to do that. All right. So it centers it up a little more. And then on the top here, let's put a heading. And I'm going to say stock list. Right. And there's stock list right there. And I'm going to put that inside of the container so that it gets the margin. And there it is. So we have our list of stocks in this table. So good. Looking pretty good so far, right? So let's talk about how to drill down and make a second route if we want to drill down into Apple stock, for instance. The other thing we can do, you see how this is not in order, right? We might want it in alphabetical order. And so we can use our order by that we talked about. So go to main.py and just say order by name, or order by symbol. Yeah, let's order by symbol. Okay. Now I do that. We have A, triple A, so forth. So we have it in alphabetical order. And if we want, we could make it paginated, so 20 at a time. We're not going to do that yet, but we could do that with a limit clause. Or we could put the alphabet up here and let you just say select all the ones that start with C, for instance, that sort of thing. We'll get there. Okay, so we have our listing. That's pretty cool. And let's make a little link to view each one, or we can have it where you click on each individual stock. So either one. Actually, let's just have it where you click on each individual stock on the company name, and that'll go to the detail. And so we don't really need this view heading here. And that's good. So we'll have two headings, symbol and name. And we don't really need the stock ID at the moment. So we'll just have the symbol and name, and then we'll put a little link tag around the name. So href like that. And what do we want our URL to look like? So here is our URL. Okay, so if I refresh that, you'll see how this becomes a link now, right? And so I can click on that, but nothing happens yet. So we want the route to change to have, say, something like stock/Apple, like that. And so when you click, whatever stock you click, you want the symbol to appear in the route, and then that route to go to a different function that retrieves the price data for that particular symbol, right? So how do we do that? So I'll put slash here, I'll type /stock/, and we already have the symbol, right? And so we'll put it in the route here, right? So symbol, okay? And then that's a variable, and it says not found, okay. And I don't want to go to the route yet. I just want to print like that. Okay. And then I want stock.symbol, not just symbol. So stock.symbol, stock.name, stock.symbol here. And let's hover over Apple, for instance. So if I hover over that, you'll see in the bottom left-hand corner, it says stock/Apple. If I hover over this one, it says stock/AAT, and so forth. So now it's a nice dynamic link. And if I click, let's see, Microsoft MSFT, if I click that, you see my URL says stock/MSFT. So we're dynamically putting a symbol in our URL, and then someone can bookmark that particular symbol or link it to their friends, share it on Facebook, whatever you want to do. But right now it's not found, right? Because we haven't defined this URL pattern. And so now we just have to create a second route, okay, that accepts that we want to define a pattern for this route, and then define a function that handles it. So we define a function called index. Why don't we define another function? So I'm going to copy this just so we get a copy of this request thing so that we don't have to type it again. And so down here in our application, let's create another function. And then the route, instead of getting a slash, we're going to get stock/, and then you put a variable here like this. So you put a symbol like that, and then this symbol will be dynamically substituted with whatever symbol is in the route. Okay, and so let's see what that looks like. And then so you put that in the route, and then you put symbol here, just like that, and then you should get symbol in the actual function. So you'll get so your route will have MSFT, and then that MSFT will match this pattern, and then you have this variable called symbol, and that becomes an input to your function. And so I could actually return symbol here, and let's see what that does. Right? So I'm hitting this function. This is a placeholder, so it matches the pattern. So when you type stock, it matches the pattern, and then this is like a dynamic part of the path. And so this apple goes into a variable called symbol, and then you have to put that input to this function right here, and then you have access to whatever symbol was passed into the route. And so whatever I type here, like what's it, Bed Bath and Beyond, right? So that symbol is there. Okay, so we have a way to provide a dynamic route and process it, right? So we have access to the symbol, and now that we have access to the symbol, right, we can copy this part again. And I promise we'll refactor this and not recopy all this stuff, but just for speed here, we will copy this. And so we already have a function called index, and so we're not going to call the function index. We're going to call this stock detail. So this is our index that shows the index of all stocks, and this is our stock detail function with this route. It accepts a request and a symbol, which is all good. It connects to SQLite, which is what we need. And then now, instead of selecting, we can select from stock, that's fine. So we're going to select ID, symbol, and name from stock, but we're not selecting all of them. We only want the ones where it equals the symbol, right? We're only selecting a single record, not all of them. So select ID, symbol, name from stock where a symbol equals question mark. And then remember, we provide these parameters here. So I'm going to provide a tuple right there. And then I'm going to put symbol, comma right there. That comma is very important to make sure it's a tuple. And so this symbol is going to get substituted for this question mark. And so if we pass MSFTP or MSFT in the URL, that'll come in, and then that symbol will go into our query. And then instead of fetching all, we'll fetch one. So we're only going to have one row. Okay. And then instead of stocks, we're just going to have stock. Instead of rows, we're just going to have row. So row equals cursor fetch one. And we'll create a new template for this. And we're going to call that template stock.html. So let's see, templates here. So we have our index template. And then let's create another template called stock detail.html. And this will be our detail page, stock detail. And then we're also going to print our stock. So stock.symbol and stock.name. And let's just put those in here for now. Okay. So main.py. We pass our row in. It's accessible. So since I put the key as stock, that's why it's called stock here. So I can name it whatever. I can whatever key I provide is what it's called in the template, and then I can pass the name of the value. So I'm going to pass row into stock here. Okay, and we just got to keep practicing, and that'll make sense over time. Okay, so yeah, good to go, right? Do we need anything else? Let's try this out. Instead of index.html, we're going to use stock detail.html. Okay, let's see if this works. So I'm going to go back to my stock page, my base page, and let's click one of these and see if it's able to load it from our database. So I'm scrolling. Let's just click something more random. Spin the wheel, and let's try this Accuray Incorporated. Okay, I clicked it. A-array went to the URL. Went into the input to the function. We selected that one record from the database. We printed stock detail, array, and the name of the stock, which is good, right? So we're able to fetch dynamically based on the URL. So if I do NFLX, right, that'll be Netflix stock, which is good. So we have a lookup there, And we can even provide a little search box up there to go directly to a page instead of scrolling through this list, and so forth. So let's keep with the Netflix theme then, and I'll click on Netflix. And let's say we want a table like that, and we want to show our daily historical price data that we've already captured, right? So let's do that. We're already connecting to the database here. Let's go ahead and select the price data for Netflix stock. Okay, so let's write cursor.execute, and let's do another query, and let's say select, and we're going to select star from stock price, where stock ID equals, remember we have a foreign key relationship, stock ID equals question mark. And then we need our tuple to let us know which stock ID. And so which stock ID are we using? Well, we've already fetched the ID of the stock up here, and we have it in row. And so we'll just use row ID. And so it might be the number 5 for Netflix stock, and then we'll select from stock price where stock ID equals 5, for instance. I don't know what the number is. So we're going to select that, and then we'll do a cursor.fetch all. And then we'll do, what are we doing? Prices equals cursor.fetch all. And so we'll pass this over. So we'll do prices, and then pass prices. All right. And let's see. So now we'll go back to our stock detail, and we'll do for price in prices. We'll do price dot, is it high? And let's start with that. So we'll do end for. Okay. I refresh the page, and look at that, a bunch of prices start coming in, but it's not very pretty yet. So once again, we have some ugly data on the screen. We have a route where we are able to fetch the data for an individual stock. We dump some data, but we want it to look like the other route, our homepage. You know, see how that's nice? It already has Semantic UI, right? But this page is ugly, and we want it to have the same stuff, right? So to handle that, we're going to create a layout and then inherit that layout in our individual templates. So how do we do that? So we're going to create a template, one more, and we're going to call it layout.html. That way we can put common UI functionality in this layout, and then only the specific content for each individual page we'll put in those individual templates, right? So this index.html has all this cool stuff like the title of the page, the UI container, and so forth. So let's copy this part here, and then in layout we'll put this, and we'll close our div and our body. Okay, and then so what Jinja 2 provides is this block tag. So we can do block, and we can give the block a name. So we'll call it content, and then you have to put end block. Okay, and that's just how it works, and nothing to really explain there. So basically you can create this overall layout, and then you can have other templates say, I want to use this layout or extend this layout, and then all these smaller templates need to provide is just the part that goes inside of here, and they automatically get this surrounding HTML. And so in my stock detail here, I can say at the top, you say extends layout.html, like that, and then you have to write block content end block. And so really you're saying use the layout, and then you're providing that one block of content. So I put this part in between these, and so I'm saying replace, use this layout, and then in place of this content part, put this content just for this template. And so if I do that, and let's indent that out just so you see. So it uses the layout, and then you're substituting in this content for that little placeholder. Okay, and so now if I refresh, you'll see it is using the font change. So we know we're using the container, and we're using semantic CSS, the UI. And if I go to view source here, right click, and I'm going to view the source, you'll see that we got the heading and footer, or the heading and the body and the container, and we're printing out the raw HTML. And so now we can do the same thing where we use this same table format if we want. So I'm going to copy the HTML for this table, or we can type it again, either way. So I'm in the index HTML right now. I'm going to copy this table here and put it right here. So this is our stock detail page. So I'll copy a table structure here, tbody and table. So that's what we need for a table. And then instead of symbol and name, we already have the symbol. We only have one symbol, right? So our headings, we'll put at the top, we'll put our stock.symbol and our stock.name. And we'll make it real big, like H1. And so that'll be a top level heading. And then we'll have a subheading with the symbol. And let's see what that looks like. And then instead of saying .stock detail, we don't need that. And then let's loop through the open, high, low, and close. So we'll show the date as a heading, the open as a heading, and the high, and then the low, and the close, and the volume. Yeah, we'll show that too. Okay. So we'll have those headings, and then here for price and prices, we can put this loop inside and then loop through and create rows for each one. So I'll have a table row, TD, and I'll copy these. So that's a table heading. All right. And then let's see. I'm going to call this bars instead of price. Okay, so I'm going to do for bar in bars like that. And then in main.py, instead of calling it prices, I'm going to call it bars. Okay, so now it's called bars. And in my stock detail, for each of these, that'll become a TD. So these aren't headings, these are cells. And I don't know why I copied that. It's faster for me to just do it this way. So, so we'll do bar dot date, and then we'll do bar dot open, bar dot high, bar dot low, and bar dot close, and bar dot volume. Okay, so we retrieved all those out of our database, and let's see if this works the first time. So do that. Look at that. Aren't we good? So we have a big heading, Netflix common stock. We have the stock symbol there, and then we have the dates in order, which is great. And then we have the open, high, low, and close, and we could sort this different ways if we wanted to. So let's say I want the most recent data on top. You know, we can make that change as well. So where stock ID equals that, and then we can add order by date descending. And there you go, October 23rd is on top, which is good. Oh, and then what I didn't fix in the last video is there's actually duplicates now, and I figured out why that was. So when we finished the last video, I mentioned there's duplicate price data, and that's because when I was showing a quick example, what happened in populate prices, see how I had that symbol? I showed that list comprehension again, symbols equals row symbol for row and rows. So I created that list, and then I also said, I looped through the rows again and said symbols.append symbol. And so the list has the symbols twice. And so when I was looping through those chunks, I actually captured every single bit of price data twice. So that's the mistake here. And so I'm going to delete that now. And I think in the source code on the website, that's not even there. So it's not a problem. It's only if you're following along directly. I'm the only one that made that particular mistake. Oh, and don't delete that line. I just want to start it as an empty list and still let it append. So that's why there's duplicate price data here. So I'm going to go in and delete all of those duplicates, or I'm going to delete them all and then just repopulate the database. So I'll just run populate prices again. But that's all of our price data in order. And then usually, how does the user get back to the home page? Usually you provide a way to go back. So I can go back here, click another stock symbol. So let's say Tesla, right? Click that. You can see the Tesla price data, but I don't want to have to use the back button. So let's just give the user a link to go back to the home page. So we'll make it like breadcrumbs, find your way home. And we can do these all on one line actually. So here in the H1, I'll do a href equals. And so we'll provide navigation back to the slash, so back to the base route. And so we'll say stocks. And then we'll give a little arrow. So this provides different icons that we can use. And so yeah, experiment with all these UI widgets. They're pretty cool. We should have some kind of arrow. Yeah, there's different arrows we can use. So we can use like this double right arrow, for instance. And so if I view the code for this, and then you scroll down, you'll see there's like a double right. I think that's the one we want. Let's try that one. So I'll copy this little I class equals angle double up icon and double right icon, right? And then I'll do that. So I'll copy that I there, and then we'll put the stock symbol. I don't know, let's see what that one looks like. So let's do that. Okay, so we don't want the up arrow, right? We want the right arrow. And we'll make it look like that. Tesla common stock. And we can just put the symbol in parentheses. So I'll just delete that. It's fine for this all to be on one line. And so we'll do that. There you go. Tesla common stock like that. And then we click here and go back to our stock list. We click Agilent Technologies. We go to Agilent, see the price. Click that and go back. So yeah, I think that's a pretty good lesson here. So yeah, I think we'll stop it here, and I'll finish up the article and write this out a little more. But this is our first crack, our first start at a UI. So we built the start of a web application using FastAPI, a brand new framework. And it's looking pretty good. We learned how to use Semantic UI, and we can browse a SQLite database that is populated with symbols and price data, and we have these nice user interfaces here. And so in the next video, I'll follow up. I can't remember the order I said I was going in, but I think we'll actually, let me see. I probably have, I'll show you the admin here. We'll see. So we'll go to the website. And let's see what we had next in store. So if I go to, where's it, posts, here's my outline here. So we can talk about technical screening, web UI, fine. So we'll add on to this, and yeah, let's do some technical screening on top of that. And I mentioned talking about pandas and SQL. So now that we have a stock listing and a list of prices for each of those stocks, let's see if we can run our SQL queries, load that data into data frames, and start talking about using, I said we'd use tulip indicators. So we'll see if we can use this library tulip indicators in the next couple of videos to process this data and derive some useful information. And also we can see if we can slap a chart at the top here just to make it a little nicer over time. So we'll keep building on this UI and build an interface for screening for certain indicators. So that's it for this video, and stay tuned for the next one, which I'll probably be recording on the road from a cabin somewhere. So I'll record one of those and post it during the week. So thanks a lot for watching, and see you next time.